A very good morning to everyone who is tuning into our Future of Work webinar this morning. My name is Tuan from SGInnovate, and we are very privileged to have with us an esteemed panel today to discuss this important and timely topic. We have Bhavya Kapoor, Managing Director, Southeast Asia of Wipro, Navin Menon, President, Southeast Asia at CISCO, and the panel discussion will be moderated by Greg Ainsworth, Risk Assurance and Digital Business Leader, PwC. SGInnovate, as you may know, is a Singapore government-owned organization that invests in and help build deep technology startups, talent, as well as the ecosystem through activities like what we are doing today. And we noticed that the future of work topic has been among the most popular subjects in our schedule of events, particularly since the COVID-19 pandemic. I used to believe that virtual events would not work, but we record the highest growth ever in our participation numbers as we harness technology to continue engaging with the community virtually. What we once thought was not possible has been accelerated faster than ever, such that Wipro believes that this new normal future of work is here for good. However, there are associated challenges. PwC's Workforce of the Future 2030 report shows that 37% are worried about automation putting jobs at risk. But the same report also highlights that 73% think technology can never replace the human mind. And some years back, Navin, our speaker today, Navin, shared with the World Economic Forum his thoughts on the AI factor and opportunity, as well as the reskilling challenge in ASEAN. So I am very much looking forward to his perspectives today, given the new circumstances. As we hear from Navin, Bhavya, and Greg, do send in your questions through the Q&A box on Zoom, which we will be going through as the event progresses. And now, before we pass the time to our speakers, I would like to thank our partner, FICCI, and invite our friend at FICCI, Navita, to say a few words as well. Navita, please.
Thank you, Tuan. On behalf of everyone at FICCI as well, welcome everyone who's joined in and tuned in to listen to this very interesting panel discussion today. Tuan has been kind enough to introduce all the esteemed panelists that we have with us this morning, and I believe this is going to be a very exciting discussion talking about the future of work, outlook and implications in a disruptive world, and we're all looking forward to it. Just to give you a quick background of FICCI. FICCI is the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry. We are India's largest business chambers. We are very pleased to have this partnership with SGInnovate. We've been working on a lot of seminars, webinars, and also engagements with startups working in the deep tech space. And we hope that with our engagement of our two esteemed organizations, we can support the overall startup community as well, and innovating community as well in enhancing their outreach between India and Singapore, looking for more partnerships, looking for more opportunities to commercialize some of the new innovations which are done in Singapore, and also get an exposure to a variety of programs that are being launched on both the sides. So once again, thank you all of us for joining us, and I would like to pass the baton over to Greg to lead the discussion today. Thank you, Greg.
Okay, thank you so much, Navita and Chuan, for that introduction. I would certainly agree with that comment that this topic is it's a very fascinating one in terms of how we've already seen this shift in work practices at the moment. And that whole area of future of work, I know business leaders around the world and certainly here in Singapore are looking at some of the opportunities and challenges that come with this new world, and obviously some of the immediate challenges we've got with the pandemic impacting us in so many different ways. So what I'd like to do in a moment is I'll just give the two panelists here a bit more of an opportunity just to share on, I suppose, their perspectives immediately and in their day-to-day work and how they see this impacting. And with that, then we'll drill down into I suppose, a more comprehensive dialogue around some of the interesting topics that this subject, future of work, brings up for all of us. I would also like just to echo that comment that we'd like to hear from all of you. So I think for all of the participants, please do feel free to raise questions as you go. I'll be moderating those questions, and amongst certainly the three of us, we'll be looking to address all of your questions during the time we have available here today. So one thing I'd probably just illustrate as one example before we get the discussion going. And when we talk about future of work, we you can sort of, if we look at the three of us here at the moment, I'm actually calling in from my home office. We have Bhavya and Naveen who are in their respective offices, and in some ways that provides a little bit of a hint to some of the areas where we're looking at this hybrid work model. And we also look at the opportunities for individuals to work outside the office environment and the home environment as well. So we're going to see a big shift just in that part of it. But that's really just one facet. I think this whole area requires organizations to think holistically around how to empower their workforce for the future, how to give them the digital and technology skills to operate effectively. And obviously that human interaction and engagement will still be incredibly important. So with those opening comments, perhaps I'd just like Bhavya and Naveen just to give a bit of an introduction and maybe just some perspectives in terms of how they're looking at this topic, and particularly the work that their respective organizations are doing. So we have Bhavya, perhaps you'd like to go first from Wipro and just give your views to kick off the discussion.
Great, thanks, Greg, and thanks for having me on the panel. It's a great pleasure this morning. I know, this was supposed to be a long weekend with a lot of people taking a holiday today on Friday, but thanks for everyone who's joined us today. I would also want to say that the world is facing a very difficult time, and especially my colleagues in India and my friends in India, right, are the worst affected today. I hope everyone is keeping safe. These are very difficult times. I can tell you with my own experience. I have a lot of colleagues, team members, friends who have been affected. But I would also say that there is hope, right? And a very positive hope that when we emerge out of this, we will emerge stronger. Here at Wipro, we are doing our bit for the society and the community that we live in. I'm sure most of you who have read press recently, we have gone ahead and converted one of our offices to a 450-bedder hospital for the community for COVID in India. And we've also partnered with a lot of healthcare institutes to see how we can help not just our employees, but their families and others, right, during these difficult times. Having said that, I am based in Singapore and we are doing relatively well here, though we've just moved to phase 2 back, but we're operating from our offices. I'm responsible for Wipro's business in what we call East of Asia, which covers countries like Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, obviously ASEAN, Hong Kong, China, South Korea, and Taiwan. So we have employees in all of these countries, and I have almost a daily connect with all of these folks there, and there are varying situations everywhere. All I would say is this also represents a great opportunity for all of us to look at the world a little differently, and hopefully during the course of the next 45 odd minutes, we'll talk a little bit more about this. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, Bhavya. Naveen, if I could ask you to just give some of your opening perspectives.
Yeah, just thanks again for inviting me as well. But I'm based in Singapore, of Indian origin, grew up in Europe and the Netherlands, and came to Asia about 15 years ago. And my role in CISCO is to run the Southeast Asia business, which is the 10 countries in ASEAN. We cover about 1,500 employees in these markets, and then through our partners, who are very, very important to us, we have a tremendous reach into the society and various communities in which we operate. I also sit on the board of the Global CISCO Foundation, and I'm the representative for Asia, Pacific, Japan, and China on the foundation board, and have been obviously exposed through that route as well. Through all of the pandemic that has affected many countries in Asia Pacific, of which India is obviously top of mind right now for us as well. So I appreciated hearing from Bhavya on that. And we as a company are also very much committed to our colleagues in our communities in India and families in India, especially. I think in terms of the what we're doing around this disruptive world is we're seeing a lot of customers who are accelerating their digital transformation, things that usually took a couple of years to execute on, all of a sudden happened overnight. I mean, one of the best examples actually is in healthcare, where you see, I was impressed to hear what Bhavya was saying about converting an office into a healthcare institution. That shows you the level of resilience and flexibility that corporations have had, right? Similarly, we've done very similar things as well by turning on projects that typically sometimes take 3 to 6 months in a matter of 3 to 4 days. And this kind of flexibility and resilience is something that I've seen a huge amount of innovation happening in this space. And in healthcare, specifically, having remote consultation is something that was very unheard of in the past. To be able to see a doctor, a GP, get a prescription and have that sent to your home was almost impossible. If I remember, even in Singapore, like even about a year and a half ago, it was very difficult to do that. Yet, that became the norm very quickly. So I'm very encouraged by the innovation that's happening through this pandemic. I'm very encouraged by our community of partners and business community that are actually innovating through this. I also feel like there are always going to be people that are left out of this ecosystem, and therefore I'm very much focusing my attention also towards philanthropic efforts, because at some point in time, business models also don't make sense, but philanthropy really has to step up. And I feel like, in that sense, philanthropic investors are also looking at digital business models. So to that end, my view is that almost every industry, almost every company, almost every institution, including the government, will become a digital business. So, we see that in private sector, we see that in public sector, we see that in the nonprofits. So to me, digitization has been accelerated and is here to stay, and it's very encouraging to see innovation happening through this time.
Okay, thank you so much, Naveen. I think with that, some great perspectives just to kick off the discussion. Perhaps I'd like to just start now with, if I think of the organizations CISCO and Wipro, fantastic large organizations in their own right, but also have been business partners for many years, over 25 years of close partnership. And I see recently Wipro, for example, has launched the CISCO business unit. So perhaps, Bhavya, any perspectives just on that partnership, and I suppose looking at the trends that's responding to, what are the opportunities for organizations such as Wipro and CISCO to work together to address some of these societal and business challenges we face at the moment?
Yeah, Greg. So first of all, you've used a very important word, partnership, and not a relationship, right? And in tech industry, partnerships are formed when you co-innovate, co-create, right, and shape the industry. And that's actually what we are doing with CISCO over the last 25 odd years. It's also a significant milestone, so to say, because there are very few organizations that have been able to achieve the 25-year mark of working together, right? So we remain committed to bringing the best of innovation, customer value, talent to deliver what both of us have to offer to the industry, right? It's also a very important step forward to grow our relationship with CISCO, right? And to offer end-to-end transformation solutions, which are now offered as a service to our clients rather than programs that we will execute and then move on, right? Which also means that we will be working with our clients for a longish period of time to enable their businesses. OpEx-based IT as a service platforms for our customers are common. And the focus that we have together with CISCO is obviously to bring their tech to the industry, whether it's around workplace virtualization and enablement, hybrid cloud, intent-based networking, or 5G. And obviously not to forget, security is embedded in all of this, right? over the last, I would say, 18 odd months or a little less, right? We've seen that the world has undergone a tremendous shift in the way the work is delivered. Like you rightly said, you're at your home today. Naveen is in his office. I'm in my office, and it's actually a hybrid environment that we're operating in. Usually, we would all be in a single place doing this session, right? But we are all connected well and delivering this session. So, Wipro, for example, has invested in what we call Virtua Desk, which is Wipro's IP and a service offering to enable VDI on top of Cisco's solutions, right? Which in a matter of days can enable thousands of people to work remotely, which was unheard of in the industry, frankly, earlier. Today, we are managing about 1 million plus desktops through Virtua Desk for about 100 plus customers globally, right? Which just demonstrates the ability of tech to enable the workforce. Similarly, if you look at networks, right? All of us have heard of virtual networks, hybrid work styles enabled by these networks, and so on and so forth, right? What we have now is secured SD-WAN, again, an area where we are working very closely with Cisco. For example, for a med tech company, and Naveen spoke about the healthcare industry earlier, so I thought I'll bring this up, right? For a med tech company in Japan, right, where we are now rolling out SD-WAN along with Cisco for 250 sites in 42 countries in a record time, right? Which enables these organizations to be more productive and more secure at the same time. Similarly, today, while we are working from home, all our colleagues are accessing applications from home rather than secured office environments, which also leads to ensuring that these applications are managed well and are functional, right, at any given point in time. So we're working with Cisco's App Dynamics platform to enable applications for a global healthcare major in the region, right? I would say that all this was done in the past as well, Greg, but at the pace that it is being done is unimaginable.
Okay, thanks, Bhavya. Perhaps, Naveen, you might want to just share any perspectives as well, just from in view of the partnership between Cisco and Wipro, and perhaps I'm also just fascinated by this opportunity for the tech sector to help really address some of these societal and business problems we have, and I think partnership's going to be quite key to that. So we often see a lot of players in the tech sector being one day fierce competitors and the next day collaborating. So whether it's this co-opetition model, but perhaps any broader perspectives, Naveen, just on where you see the future of partnership within the tech sector as well.
Yeah, look, I think it's great. I mean, it's great to do this with Wipro because we're such strong and loyal partners of each other. Look, partnership has many connotations. I mean, some cases it's uncomfortable. In some cases, it's very satisfying. But in all cases, it's always equal. And so to me, the relationship has to be equal on both sides, and then you can really drive outcomes for customers. And look, and not just for the customers. I mentioned it earlier. I think for society at large, because I feel like a lot of solutions that corporations wanted in the past tended to focus on productivity and revenue gains, etc. But now we're seeing that corporations are taking on a bigger role in society to actually drive sustainable change towards ecosystems. I think a couple of areas to mention, right? When we're doing urban planning projects, for example, like what used to be called smart city, but basically urban planning, use cases, they tend to hover around things that have societal impact. So, for example, waste management is a big issue in urban centers. This has a huge societal impact because it requires you to think about plastics and and sustainable sort of delivery of waste throughout the city? What about traffic monitoring and even public safety? These are societal gains. They're not necessarily gains for individual companies, so they're gains for the citizen overall as well. When there's less traffic on the road, you obviously have less congestion, but you also have the ability to kind of be more productive and actually generate more income for the city or for the region. Similarly, lighting projects are, back in the 90s, I remember when New York was very unsafe. One of the biggest programs that at the time Giuliani put in place was a lighting project, and lighting actually had an impact on crime. It reduced crime dramatically. But now it's no longer about on-off lighting. It's about what happens if you have haze. What happens if you have a thunderstorm during the middle of the day? How do you optimize lighting to ensure that safety is top of mind? So there's lots of projects that we're doing, which are very interesting, especially with partners like Wipro, where we can actually take solutions from our partners, but embed them with core infrastructure platforms and deliver them in a secure and reliable way that provides citizen outcomes as well as individual outcomes for governments or for corporations. So I feel like that's an area, that we will like to do more of in the future, because there's a need for that, but also it also pushes us to innovate a lot more. And that's the beauty about the tech industry, is that we're always driven by innovation.
Wonderful. Thanks, Naveen. I am seeing that we're starting to get some questions coming in from the audience, so I do encourage those questions to keep coming in. I will turn to those shortly. Perhaps I'll just pose one more question for the moment to the panelists, and it's a broad one. But I guess when we look at the pandemic accelerating some of the existing trends we see in increased automation, digital adoption, and particularly things such as remote working, we're seeing a mini explosion, at least in the shorter term, around e-commerce. And I think when we look at this, looking at it from a worker's perspective, there are obviously some concerns. Some see also great opportunities in this as well. But I mean, just quoting a McKinsey study saying that the increase is about 25% higher in workers that are expected to change their job role in future than perhaps pre-pandemic. So just on your perspectives, what do you see as the future of work going to look like, and how do you think business models will adapt to that new workforce model as well? Perhaps Naveen, if you want to continue on with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, one of the biggest pitfalls we've seen is to companies to rush into digitization and put in place lots of digitization without thinking about security, or thinking about security and data privacy secondly. But it should be, I think digitization with security built in is probably one of the biggest strategies that I would recommend or advocate for. At the peak of the pandemic, 69% of organizations in Asia Pacific actually experienced about a 25% or more jump in cyber threats or alerts. So, these are some of the biggest pitfalls to me. And actually 60% of people expressed concern about their data not being adequately protected. And so, we've done, and this is based on our own privacy report and study that we did in our future secure remote work report that we completed a few months ago. So security and data privacy are top of mind. And I think that, another example I think we all need to be aware of is as we start to move into, and I saw a question in the chat about the shipping industry. I know we'll come to it later, but I just want to highlight that there's going to be much more kind of, location mapping and location tracing and track and trace. And what that requires is obviously technology, but it also requires users to be comfortable with their data to be transmitted to second and third party sources that they may or may not be aware of at this point in time. They're providing data to an application, but the user may not know where that application is sending that data to, right? So I think that there has to be a lot of public advocacy and public communications campaigns to say, look, there are benefits in tracking and tracing, especially when it comes to coronavirus, containing coronavirus. However, the public need to be made aware of where their data resides. and where that data is going, and that they need to have some form of accountability or security over where that data could go and how it could be used by the institutions that are serving them. So those to me are the two biggest pitfalls. But I don't know. I'm sure Bhavya has some views as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, Bhavya, your views? Yeah.
No, so I agree. You know, I think the greatest challenge is also to manage this blended work environment, right? And it has a lot of implications, right? There's so much disruption that's happening at such a rapid pace, which is leading to new jobs creations. You know, who would have heard about drone pilots, Naveen and Greg, right? Very few of us, right? Maybe 2 years back, we would have heard the word drone, but not drone pilots, right? Then you have AR, VR creators, right? Machine learning coders, right? Cryptocurrency miners, right? So these are new jobs that that are being created, and a lot of it has to do with what's happening around us, right? Look at the new business models, right, and engagement models that are coming in. You know, today a lot of work is being done through gig economy, right, and gig platforms like we have one which is called Top Coder, right, which has about 1.7 million developers and coders that subscribe to that platform and offer services to clients worldwide. Similarly, you know, there are new workers that are coming into the workforce, which is chatbots, software robots that work side by side with humans, right? So I would say that there's a lot of disruption that's happening, and people would have to keep pace with it and keep learning. Otherwise, like you rightly said, Naveen, some of them will be left behind and maybe out of the industry very soon, right, if they don't keep on learning and reinventing themselves.
Okay, thanks, Bhavya. And actually, when you raise that point around, it's almost an agility point for the workforce. It, you know, raises questions around what else do we need to do around upskilling, career model development, and enablement of people, etc. I will come back to some of those topics because I think they're really important ones given some of the challenges indicated there. But what I thought I would do now is start to look at the Q&A. There's some pretty interesting questions coming through. So I think what I'll do is I'll start to look at a few of those at the moment. And maybe we do start with the first one here that I see coming through from Zach, which is, with the future of work, which is technology enabled, disadvantage low-income countries and further drive the digital divide. So once again, a very big question. Bhavya, do you want to pick up on that one?
Sorry, Greg, if you could just repeat the question for me.
Sure. So the question is, would the future of work, which is technology enabled, disadvantage low-income countries and further drive the digital divide?
The answer is a yes and a no. You know, frankly, if you see, there's so much innovation that's happening in low-income countries today, right? That for all you know that these countries may be better off and may be far ahead of where they were before the pandemic, right? Look at what's happening in Indonesia, India, for example, right, which are seemingly low-income companies as compared to the West. But the amount of innovation that's happening just because of the population that's there and the consumer base that's there, right? Today, in Indonesia and India, we have the largest base of e-commerce users, right? So for all you know that with the advent of tech, these companies may take, these countries may take a big leap after the pandemic, is my view.
So
Yeah,
once again, there's some opportunities provided by that tech as well. Yeah, Naveen?
I actually would be a little bit more controversial than that, and I would say actually it will disadvantage the poor countries significantly. Like, it's not even going to be a minor inconvenience. It's going to be significantly disadvantageous to low-income countries. And let me give you a couple of ways to think about it. One way to think about it is, let's look at education, right? So let's think what's happening now and what's likely to happen in 20, 25 years when those people who are in the education system right now will transition to the workforce. What you're seeing now in low-income countries is about roughly the majority of children who are living in remote areas in, say, Indonesia, are actually not in the formal education system, and they have not been in the formal education system for about a year. Similarly, a lot of rural workers in Indonesia and in the Philippines do not have the means to access digital technology, let alone a strong carrier network that has 3G or 4G connectivity. So what's happening is that the workforce and the children in education systems are being significantly disadvantaged right now. What that means is when those children transition into the workforce, they will be less adequately skilled, less adequately prepared for the workforce, and hence less in demand. That causes a real structural imbalance in terms of supply and demand for labor. And that labor will shift to countries that have actually been able to keep their kids in school and been able to provide for their career paths for those children to move into the workforce. So I'm actually very concerned about it. And I think that we haven't come up with a solution yet in the world, actually, on how we can keep our kids sufficiently energized and motivated in schools, complete whatever coursework they need to do, whether you believe in exams or not, I'm not sure, and then progress into higher education and continue on the lifelong journey of education. So I'm sufficiently pessimistic, and I feel that here, philanthropy cannot actually address this problem in its own right, because there's not enough philanthropists in the world to actually solve this problem. What it requires is a fundamental rethink of labor markets, a fundamental rethink of education, the education system, and then the role that digitization has to play in enabling student-centered learning. So I'm actually very worried about it, to be honest, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, and it's important to put those worries and concerns on the table as well. I mean, by doing that, hopefully there is more of an opportunity for those with the right interests at heart to explore what some of the solutions are, which also has got to involve a governmental view from different societies as well, I would believe, particularly looking at education sector and enablement too. So, okay, we'll certainly park that challenge. I think it's a very real one and a very significant one. Let's perhaps move on with some of the other questions now, just to get a bit more specific around, I guess what some of the audience is asking around. Perhaps we'll turn to the question on the shipping industry. And maybe, Naveen, it sounded like you had some perspectives you were starting to share there anyway.
Yeah.
Presumably you've got the question without me reading it out again, or?
Yeah, I just clicked on it just earlier, and I saw it when it popped up. It's a really interesting one because there are so many parts to the shipping industry. And so if you're looking at, like, say, container or, the whole supply chain operations part of the shipping industry, that's one piece. But there's also the port business, the carrier business, there's also the tourism shipping industry. So depending on where the question was directed at, I would say that one common theme or two or three common themes emerge, right? One is the requirement to have very, very tight rules and regulations and technologies that enable social distancing and tracking and tracing to be put into place. And here I think the container industry is actually quite far ahead in this space, because there was already quite a bit of investment being put into technology on freight and cargo, right? The second is on worker safety, because I think that when you are on the ships and you are going from port to port and you're in contained spaces, this poses a huge health risk for the workers in the maritime industry. So I think there's going to be a lot more emphasis on ensuring those workers are protected, providing adequate technology, like if it's wearables or anything like that would enable the workers to actually be quickly diagnosed, contained, and also put into the formal healthcare system so they can get the right level of care. And then, of course, there's the whole shipping, the cruise liner industry, which in many ways is similar to the airline industry, because there's going to be a lot of regulations around how and where you can travel, which boats you can get on, which boats which locations you can dock and can't dock. So I think this is an issue that will play out over the next 5 to 7 years as new strains and viruses come up, and the progression of the whole investment into vaccines starts to develop in a more sustainable way. So I think that I'm already encouraged on the container side and on the port side, because the level of investment is quite high and it will probably only increase. But autonomous docking, management of containers and fleet is really, actually even autonomous handling of very large container ships are really going to be the norm in the future. So, and that will actually affect the labor force in a significant way on that side of the business.
Okay. All right, let's move on to another question. And actually, there's a lot in this question, so I'm going to try to break this into 2 parts. And it's the one here that says, it was mentioned at the start that 70% plus believe that technology cannot replace humans. And the question goes on to say, what are companies such as Cisco, Wipro, and PwC doing to help build this human-centric future of work, where AI augments our capabilities and does not replace humans? So what I want to do, perhaps you have to break this into 2 questions. One is, firstly, to focus on the human element part of this, and maybe get your views on what more we need to do around upskilling, different new HR policies and approaches to enable our workforce to become more agile, embrace the best of technology, but also embrace the best of human qualities. And then I'll have a secondary question more about what you think specifically around the future of frontier technologies such as AI. But perhaps if I can start with the human aspect of that first, and from a HR point of view and workforce policies. Bhavya, would you like to pick up on that question first?
Yeah, so there was a research that was done by Forrester, right, recently, and the study said that in the next 2 years there will be more programs that will fail due to automation than they will succeed. What it meant was that in the rush to automate, what most people are doing is they're forgetting the human angle to it and taking a very myopic view of tech, which ignores the importance of change management, of people in the process, and so on and so forth, right? So definitely, there is going to be a coexistence of people and tech. We've all heard of paper-based automation, early on, and that has progressed quite a bit now to automating a lot of processes, right, which we couldn't imagine would be automated. But all of these would not exist without human interactions and humans being there side to side. Now, I can give you examples from our own work, right? Till about 3 years back, if we went into managed services engagements, we would do transitions from an incumbent, which could be in-house or another supplier, to humans. Today, we talk about transitions from humans to bots and humans to humans, right? So there is always going to be coexistence, Greg, between tech and humans. And I would say that progressively, humans will take a more controlling role, right? And the mundane activities could probably be done by the tech.
Okay, thanks, Bhavya. Naveen, any thoughts on, and particularly I'm interested in the human element of how we keep our existing workforce engaged and prepared for the future as well.
Yeah. So I don't know if people can. I've never done this before. It's the first time I'm doing it. But if people can see this kind of slide behind me, maybe not. But then we did a study that covered 6 countries in Southeast Asia, and we did look at the distribution of labor and how they were affected by the 5 key kind of exponential technologies. And there are 275 million workers in Southeast Asia right now. And we basically did the study with Oxford Economics, which is an economics think tank. And we built an entire labor market model that looked at by job type, job function, by location, by industry. So 21 industries, 42 different job types, I think something like 400 different tasks, 428 different task typologies, and 430 occupations, 430 occupations. And what we found is that actually there will be a net displacement of jobs, as in jobs will move from one to another, but those jobs will change in nature. So it's not like there will be redundancies in a massive scale. What we found is that 10% of that 275 million people will be displaced, meaning they will move from a current job into another job. But the requirement of governments and corporations and training institutions, whatever, is to actually reskill those workers so they can take on those other jobs, right? Because if you do see robotic process automation gain in scale and actually implement, the low value tasks, then humans will have to take on slightly higher value tasks. And so that requires reskilling. So this point that Bhavya was making about humans living alongside, robots is actually exemplified by, looking at the car, like, for example, in 1950, where all you had was like a steering wheel, a radio dial, and possibly, if you were lucky, a speedometer, right? That was the extent of what you saw. But now if you look at a car right now, you are actually, as a human, interacting with a lot of data. And interestingly and surprisingly enough, whether you are 18 years old and just got your first license, or you are 80 plus years old and been driving for 50, 60 years, you have actually come to learn to find this intuitive, this ability to kind of drive on the road, look where you're going, pick up signals from the various dials that are being shown to you, and use that information to adapt and learn and move the vehicle through a crowded road. That is what I expect in the future, because I expect that humans will work and live alongside human beings, and we'll be getting data from all kinds of sources, but we will learn to adapt and live with machines. And that to me, that's a really good example of human flexibility, right? And it seems obvious and it seems silly almost, but it's actually very true.
In fact, we did a study, Greg, and
Sure.
It's very interesting, to Naveen's point, right? We did a study with our own employees, and we have an employee base of almost 200,000 employees, right? And you'll be surprised that 87% of these employees say that they're very comfortable with reskilling in order to work alongside with their digital colleagues. So, that's a huge portion, right, of human beings saying that we're very comfortable working with digital colleagues.
Yeah. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is maybe shift the discussion a bit more to a view on the future of technology, and there's probably a few questions we could cover under this. I like the question that's been raised here on the from Klaus in the audience here. Zoom or team video calls, I'll include WebEx in there as well, are really pretty much the same as the video conference I used in the 90s at Accenture. Is this really the pinnacle of what we can do, or will we see virtual reality collaboration environments once the technology is at 8K resolution per eye, head, and figure track, or is that too distracting and too far away? Probably, Naveen, probably makes sense for you to pick up on that one first.
Yeah, let me start with that. I mean, look, I think they are quite different from the 90s, and in a couple of ways. I mean, and more practical ways, and things that we probably don't value as much, but we see it has actually been implemented. Like, for example, having a virtual assistant take meeting notes automatically during the call was something that I know I wanted in 2008, but wasn't available. That was launched during coronavirus times. Having artificial intelligence to block out annoying noises that are around the house, like, for example, if someone's drilling next door, or in Singapore, if suddenly the fogging happens right in your neighborhood, having that drone noise kind of eliminated so that you don't have to mute all the time. before you speak. And even if you speak, you hear that droning noise in the background. That's gone, right? So high quality audio, elimination of noise. Another one, which is really important, is we introduced something called WebEx Roundtable. Roundtable is to make sure that we have inclusion in meetings. So how many times have we been to a meeting where, I mean, this is one example, the three of us, the only ones who are really talking, right? But sometimes you go to meetings and, there'll be 15 people in a meeting room and only 2 people are talking all the time. Yet there are people in the room that want to contribute, but they don't feel included. They don't feel empowered. They don't have the ability to even raise their hand and feel like their voice would be heard. Now, with WebEx Roundtable, actually, this problem statement is identified and is actually collected in the back end and fed back to managers. And they won't necessarily tell you, because privacy is a fundamental human right, according to CISCO. But we won't tell you specifically which people didn't speak. What we'll tell you is that in the meetings that you've been to, you've been speaking, pretty much in 85% of the time, you're the only one talking. So what are you going to do about it as a leader, right? So this kind of information is going to be fed back to you. And it's not just like it's difficult for a human in your team to feed that information to you, but that's inclusion, diversity and inclusion at its best, getting diverse ideas and including everyone. Now that's just technology that's already here, right? That's not technology in the future. When I think about technology in the future, and Chuck Robbins has been out and said this, and I've actually spoken to our distinguished engineer in the US who's been working on this technology, and this technology already exists, is obviously the 3-dimensional holographic communication exists, because human beings don't really want to look at a 2-dimensional screen all the time, especially if it's got 25 or 24 different boxes on a screen. What they want is they want to have almost like real life 3-dimensional people to discuss things with. This exists, okay? It hasn't been put out in the market yet, but it exists, and the application and the use case has to be deployed in a responsible way, so that the technology is available to those who need it the most and those who require it the most, as opposed to those who are willing to pay for it only. Hence, I think it becomes more a commercial issue about rolling out technology like that, and it becomes a privacy and an issue, because what if you're seen in 3 different places at the same time? What does that do to the human construct, right? I mean, if it's that high quality, I'm not talking about the Star Wars style where you can actually see it's like an avatar. I'm talking about real 3-dimensional holographic images. If you're seen in 3 different places at the same time, what does that do to human interaction? The societal implications are pretty significant. So I think it's not about the matter of technology, it's about rolling it out in a responsible way. And so I think you'll see a lot of innovation in WebEx, at least, going forward.
Thanks, Naveen. Bhavya, just your perspectives on, I'll make it pretty flexible for you. What you see is the future of technology, any major trends you'd like to bring out. We obviously hear a lot of people talking about AI-enabled business, but yeah, just your perspectives would be great.
Yeah, so, just to answer the earlier question, I think we've come a long way from video conference to WebEx and whatnot, right? Zoom. We've come from photo bombing to Zoom bombing. So there's quite a bit of work that's been done, right? Having said that, I think the future will, in my view, hover around 3 important pillars. One is analytics, right? There will be a lot of data that will be produced because of digitization, and there will be meaningful use of this data. The second, in my view, is cybersecurity, because the threat surface suddenly will be multifold, right? With people working from anywhere, a lot of new workers getting inducted, new jobs getting created, and so on and so forth. And third is digitization for use cases leveraging 5G. I think 5G is going to disrupt a lot of work that's being done today. It may even, for all you know, enable remote surgeries, right? We're talking about remote maintenance. We've been talking about it for a long time. There are use cases that exist, people do it, but it will be done at scale. So in my view, these 3 will shape the next 2 to 4 years.
Okay, I'm just watching the time a little bit. We've got about 5 minutes left. So there's a couple of questions just coming in around upskilling and education. So maybe just some perspectives. So for example, there was a question there around, will the traditional university education and degree change to more, I suppose, micro certifications around different topics? There was another one also around what I call almost democratized learning through online models, etc. So maybe any just quick perspectives on upskilling or education. Once again, Naveen, perhaps to cover off that one.
Yeah, I would love to see it change and dramatically, but I think there's a few players in this ecosystem which require to cooperate and cooperate productively. One is parents, the other one is the children themselves, the third is obviously the teachers. So that is probably some of the most difficult conversations you will ever likely to have around this. So, and I have to say one more to add to that is our employers. If you're an employer, will you stop hiring someone just because they didn't get a university degree? Or do you still believe university degrees are required in order to get a job? I mean, I've started hiring and I'm looking for a chief of staff, and I am actually looking for someone not to submit a resume or anything. I've actually just asked 3 questions and they can respond to them in any way they like. And they're all geared around things like problem solving, initiative taking, and or can-do attitude, and thirdly around teamwork and leadership. So those are the only things I require. Whether that person is 85 years old or 16 years old doesn't bother me. If that person went to university or not doesn't bother me. If they have 10 years work experience or 25 doesn't bother me either. But I would like to get someone that is a problem solver, can take initiative, and can actually work well in teams and communicate well. And those are the things that are important for me, at least in this particular role. So personally, I would love to see employers take on more risk in that sense. But that's another one. That's a tricky one. I'm not sure it happens overnight.
Okay, thanks, Naveen. I will turn the question to Bhavya, but also just in the interest of time, I'll ask you to also build in any other final comments, Bhavya, that you have that you'd just like to share with the audience. Just before I hand off to you, I will quickly address one of the questions that I saw in there as well personally, and that was regarding data privacy and security. Are there guidelines in particular countries and industries? The short answer is yes, they are, and I think you'll find the regulators continuing to evolve. I'll just mention a couple of quick examples. One would be obviously around data privacy, the GDPR regulations that rolled out in Europe. Here in Singapore, we have the PDPA, which is continually being evolved. I think also in certain industries, such as the banking sector, you'll have technology risk management guidelines by the regulators, etc. So very quick answer to that one. But I'd be delighted to pick up on any of those topics separately if that's helpful. So I think with that, Bhavya, if I could just pass to you with any sort of final comments, whether on education or otherwise, and then I'll give Naveen just a very quick chance to wrap up as well. Yeah. Bhavya, you're on mute.
Sorry. So I would just say that there's great opportunity ahead of us. And the pandemic has shown us that whatever we could do in months, years can be done in days and weeks, right? There will be a lot of new jobs, new tech, new ways of working, new workspaces, new work culture, new workforce that will emerge out of this, right? It's now up to us as individuals to pick this up and re-vector ourselves to greater heights. I would say that.
Thank you, Bhavya. Naveen, any final comments?
Yeah, I would just say I love that, and I agree with Bhavya entirely. So that's absolutely true. Only one thing I would add to what he said, because like I said, I agree with everything he said, is that it's up to us to actually use technology as a great equalizer. And us means not the company, or us doesn't mean our partner, or it's actually individual. I think each individual needs to take an ownership in a problem and actually help solve that problem and make sure it gets executed on. Like if you see an injustice or you see something that needs to be fixed, get out there and challenge people about it, because the companies, the governments are all looking for answers, and they don't necessarily have all the answers right now. So we're looking for smart people who can help solve problems. And that's, I think that's what, to me, the future is going to be all about.
Okay, with that, we'll wrap things up. So I'll just say thank you very much to Naveen and Bhavya. I think fantastic insights. That hour went incredibly quickly for me. And obviously, a lot of these topics we could spend a lot more time on as well. So thanks very much. And I'll just see Navita or Chuan. I don't know if there's any sort of final comments in closing, but I'd just like to say thank you for the both the panelists and also the audience for joining us and engaging with us today and asking some great questions.
Likewise, Greg, I would very much like to thank you, Bhavya and Naveen, for such an engaging conversation on all topics that we managed to cover as much as we can within the 1 hour. And I would like to also thank a very attentive and engaging audience as well. I think we do expect a good number of questions, but it's amazing that we couldn't finish going through all of them within the 1 hour time frame. I think on this subject, SGInnovate, FICCI, and all of our other partners will continue to engage with the ecosystem on these topics. For example, in a month's time, we will be talking about how AI could actually impact the future of education with chief learning officers from Ericsson, Novartis, and other global leaders joining us. And also, as Naveen and Bhavya pointed out, technology is neither good or bad. It is all dependent on each and every one of us who design and use the technology. So the topic of responsible use of AI and other frontier technologies will also come up very strongly in our activities moving forward. We would send you the recording of today's event via email, so please stay updated with us. And with that, I would like to thank everyone for today and have a good weekend ahead. And goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.